The NBA draft, 4 weeks away, and it is time for our very first mock draft on CBS Sports HQ. I'm Chris Hassel, joined by our 3 mock general managers, Garry Parrish, Adam Finklestein, and Kyle Boone, of course. And these guys are going to play our mock GMs for the full first round of our mock here. And the Orlando Magic are picking number 1. I think we know the 3 guys who are going to go 1, 2, 3. We just don't know the specific order at this point. Jabari Smith is the favorite to go number 1 right now, by minus 210 or so in Vegas. But Chet Holmgren is certainly a possibility, along with Paolo Banchero. Garry Parrish, you are picking for the Magic, who the last time they had the number 1 pick took Dwight Howard back in 2004.
With the first pick in the 2022 NBA draft, you put me in charge. The Orlando Magic are selecting Chet Holmgren out of Gonzaga. Simply put, I think he's got the highest upside, the most potential of any prospect in this draft. And I understand there are some concerns about his body, his frame, whether he'll ever be able to put on enough weight or be strong enough to actually flourish in the NBA. But I've made this point in other places. In 2018, it's pretty clear at this point Luka Doncic should have been the number 1 pick in that NBA draft, and yet he wasn't. He went 3rd. And the reason he went 3rd is because people were focusing on things that were perceived problems that actually haven't been problems at all. A lack of athleticism, maybe his first step isn't as quick as it needs to be. Will he be able to get off shots in the NBA against NBA-level athletes with size? Obviously, he can do all of the things he did in Europe in the NBA, and he has become an undeniable superstar. Not comparing Chet Holmgren to Luka Doncic as a player. They're obviously very different. But my point is, if you focus too much on Chet Holmgren's frame, body, you miss all of the obvious stuff that gives him a chance to someday be a franchise big and an NBA All-Star.
Yeah, Garry, I couldn't agree with you more there. I think that the body is gonna take care of itself eventually. If there's one thing that NBA programs know how to do, it's how to put muscle mass on their guys. And going back to when he was a high school underclassman, Chet was always kind of skinny, but he was never soft. I mean, this is a kid who knows how to battle. He's very much the modern day NBA big man. I know that the center position has never been less emphasized across the board in the NBA, but this is not a conventional center. This is someone who can bring the ball up the floor and start the break, who can shoot the 3, who's quick off his feet athletically, and who's also an elite rim protector with phenomenal defensive instinct. So I agree with you. I think he's got the highest upside in this draft.
And I'm going to go ahead and agree with my fellow GMs here. I would take Chet Holmgren at number 1. There are going to be questions, right, about what he can't do at the NBA level, especially with the frame being as small as it is at 7 foot and just under 200 pounds. But I think there is a lack of appreciation for what he can do. And he can do a lot of things on both ends of the floor. Rated 94th percentile last season in defensive situations around the basket. That's according to Synergy. It was top 10 in block rate, 99th percentile in offensive situations around the basket. And that is, again, according to Synergy. So very efficient two-way player. He was not asked to be kind of the alpha on a really loaded Gonzaga team, but I think he is just scratching the surface of what he's going to eventually be at the NBA level. And at the NBA level, I think he can be a future All-Star.
All right, Kyle, going to come right back to you because we are making you the mock general manager of the Thunder, who have multiple picks, one of several teams that has multiple picks in this first-round mock. Who are you taking for the Thunder?
Yeah, with the number 2 pick in the 2022 NBA draft, the Thunder are going to select Jabari Smith Jr. from Auburn. An elite catch-and-shoot threat, especially for his size. He shot 42% from the three-point line last season as a true freshman. At 6'10", he became the second freshman in college hoops history to ever make 73 pointers and 100 free throws, joining a guy named Kevin Durant, who has turned out to be a pretty darn good NBA player in his own right. So really think the sky is the limit for Jabari Smith. It really showed some promising development throughout the season as a shooter. The Thunder clearly need to add some front court depth and some talent, and I think Jabari Smith, if Chet Holmgren is off the board, Jabari Smith is the obvious answer for OKC here at number 2.
I would seriously consider Paulo Banchero with this pick because I think he's got a shot to be a star as well. But I can't argue against this in any sort of meaningful way. Jabari Smith is a terrific prospect. You know, a 6'10 athlete who can guard multiple positions, plays hard, really competes, and can reliably knock down a three-point shot. And not just reliably knock it down, that sells him short. He's a great three-point shooter with great size. For somebody who plays on the perimeter. So I think the worst case scenario for Jabari Smith is that, he's a decade-long NBA player who, can guard multiple positions out on the perimeter, switch everything, and knock down corner threes and one dribble pull-ups and two dribble pull-ups forever. The best case scenario is that he becomes more of a creative playmaker, and now you've got a total package that allows him to possibly be one of the very best players in the entire world.
Yeah, guys, a couple things on this front. First of all, I think Jabari has improved more in the last year than either of the other candidates, if you put Paulo in that category, to be the number one pick. He's really made gigantic strides. If you didn't see him in high school, you'd be shocked to know that he wasn't a polished floor spacer back then. And now he's not only a polished floor spacer, he's a tough shot maker. And between that and his defensive versatility, that really fits the modern day NBA. The thing that concerns me, though, is when you start talking about whether or not he can be a star, I just think he's got to impact the game more inside the paint. He attempted a very low percentage of shots at the rim. Really a scary number. I think it was 16% of his total field goal attempts. Conversely, Paulo and Chet were both in the 40th percentile in terms of the amount of shots they took at the rim. So I want to see that improve. I want to see him assert himself there. But in terms of the way he fits the modern day NBA, I can't disagree with any of the logic.
And Adam, it would seem to make the Rockets pick at number 3 basically pretty easy, right? I mean, we've heard you guys talk about the three guys that are going to go 1, 2, 3, maybe not in this specific order, but Chet Holmgren went 1 in our draft. Jabari Smith just goes 2. So at 3, it would have to be Paolo Banchero, right?
Yes. The formality with the third pick in the NBA draft, we're going to take Paolo Banchero. Here's the thing about Paolo, and I think this is the part that puts him more in contention for a top 2 pick than I think people are giving credence to. He was the best high school freshman in the country 4 years ago. This year, I think you can make a strong argument that he was the best college freshman in the country. He has been the best of these players from start to finish so far. And that is incredibly hard to do, and it speaks to his mindset. Typically, when you get a 15-year-old kid and you tell them they're the number 1 player in the country, they rest on their laurels. They lose all sense of humility. Paulo was the exact opposite. He's continued to get better at each step along the way, and now he's a 6'10", 250-pound jumbo playmaker. And I just think that alpha mentality is something that we're not talking quite enough about. So in Houston, him and Jalen Green, I'm a little concerned about the fact that neither one of them prioritizes the defensive end of the floor. But at number 3, I think he's an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah, and I like this pick as well, Adam. I'm going to agree with you again. I think Banchero's polished, especially on the offensive end, is absolutely going to be a trait that is going to translate to the NBA, especially after drafting Jalen Green. I think Jaden Ivey should be in play in this range, but after drafting Jalen Green last year, to me, I think the obvious answer is Paolo Banchero here. He grew up playing guard. I think he's a natural playmaker, and as his size at 6'10", I think that is going to be a trait that is going to translate to the NBA level. Really good in the mid-range. Would like to see him improve a little bit as a three-point shooter. And as you mentioned, Adam, the defense is something that I think he needs to work on to really be a full two-way player in the NBA. I have confidence that he can eventually do that. Again, he's been one of the most impactful players at every level that he's played at for the last 4 years. So I think his developmental trajectory is very promising. And at number 3, I think this is probably the best value here.
Yeah, the Rockets have the easiest job at the top of this draft because it is, most people agree, a 3-player draft. And when you're picking third in a 3-player draft, you just take whichever one falls to you. And I'm on record that Chet Holmgren should go number 1, but if somebody wanted to argue the guy is actually Paulo Banchero, I can listen to that. You know, I've gone back and forth between Holmgren, Smith, and Banchero. I think they're all terrific. I could see any of them or all of them becoming NBA All-Stars. And, you know, like Adam said, you know, I've seen Paulo since he was, you know, sophomore year in high school, and even back then he looked like a Division I basketball player. Like you could drop him into a Duke basketball game when he was 16 years old and he would have been fine. And all he's done since then is get bigger, stronger, more skilled. There are some questions about, you know, his athleticism, some questions about, you know, who he's going to guard on the defensive end of the court, because he was not spectacular at Duke in that specific area. But man, he is so versatile and great on the offensive end that I have a lot of respect for Holmgren and Jabari Smith. But it would make me a little uneasy to pass on him. And if you're Houston, I think you're thrilled with the third pick in the draft, adding a guy of this caliber.
Likely a clear-cut top three. So at number 4 with the Sacramento Kings is where things start to get a little bit more unpredictable. Adam, you have the pick for Sacramento.
Yeah, well, we are taking all 5 minutes that the NBA is allowing. We're about to walk up to the podium with one envelope, and then we're getting a call from ownership telling us to change our pick. So so with the Sacramento Kings, in all seriousness, with the context of the Kings, the fact that they just moved off Tyrese Halliburton, the fact that they are trying to make the playoffs next year, I'm going to go with Keegan Murray here because I think that is what they might do. Jaden Ivey is admittedly the 4th best prospect on my board, but for the reasons I previously stated, I think that Murray is a better fit for Sacramento. Sacramento just traded a future All-Star in Tyrese Halliburton to get Sabonis inside. In so doing, they became a slower team. If you were to pair Jaden Ivey and De'Aaron Fox in the backcourt, not to mention Davion Mitchell, you've got a 3-guard lineup which needs to play fast. I just don't think Ivey fits that. So while I think the first priority should be to try and trade this pick, I think if they don't have a good option there, they will look at Murray, who can step in at that 4 spot, score without having a lot of plays run for him. And if you talk about a player who has gotten better over the course of the last couple of years, you are talking about Keegan Murray. Had one Division I scholarship offer as a high school senior, made massive strides in his post-grad year at DME Academy, and has done it every year since, arguably the best player in college basketball this past season. I think he may be Sacramento's choice at 4.
Only player last season with 60 dunks and 63s. Let's move on to number 5. Kyle, you have the pick for the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, I'm ecstatic that Adam has gone ahead and left Jaden Ivey on the board, because at number 5 for the Detroit Pistons, I'm taking Jaden Ivey. He is the number 1 prospect on the CBS Sports big board right now. He is the most explosive athlete in this draft. I think this is excellent value. Get a guy who I can pair next to Cade Cunningham, who was the number 1 pick in last year's draft, and I think can ease some of the playmaking burden off of what Cade Cunningham is already shouldering with the Pistons. Jaden Ivey's explosiveness, his ability to kind of blow by defenders on offense, I think is going to be a really good fit in Detroit. There's definitely some questions about Jaden Ivey, projecting him long-term in the NBA. I will raise my hand and admit that. Defensively, he had some nightmarish sequences at Purdue as a sophomore this past season. And certainly I think he can improve as a playmaker too, as a passer. But taking all that into account, I do believe he has the highest ceiling among all prospects that are still on the board here at number 5. He has all-star potential. And so I'm scooping up Jaden Ivey at number 5.
Yeah, this is what I would also do here if he's available with the 5th pick. I'd take a hard look at Shaedon Sharpe out of Kentucky, and we'll get to him soon enough, I'm certain. But, yeah, I think I pull the trigger on Ivey. Just a terrific top-shelf athlete, really explosive in transition, vicious, violent dunks, and improved as a three-point shooter from his freshman year to his sophomore year. In that first year of college at Purdue, he only shot 26% from 3. As a sophomore, he shot 36% from 3. That is an indication that he really put in the work. And if you believe in that number and that it can continue to improve, well, when you've got an athlete with size who, you know, can get to the rim over and over again, be explosive in transition and also reliably make a jumper, you take that guy with a 5th pick every opportunity you get.
Garry, you mentioned Shaedon Sharpe. You are up at number 6 with the pick for the Pacers.
And that's who we'll take, Shaedon Sharpe out of Kentucky. He's not a mystery because we've all seen him, but he is the guy at the top of this draft who didn't play college basketball. Now, he was eligible to play in the second semester at Kentucky, but I think the best way to describe it is his camp made a business decision that it wasn't in his best interest to join a team midseason and possibly damage what looks like guaranteed top 10 draft stock. Depending on who you talk to, there's some people who genuinely believe that if he would have played college basketball this past season, he would be more in the conversation to be the first pick in this draft. So if you can get him outside of the top 5, I think you feel pretty good with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think he's the highest risk, highest reward prospect in the lottery. I think he would have had a very good chance to be a top 2 pick a year from now. The thing that I question about Shaedon, because listen, he's got the size, he's got the length. We know he's an explosive vertical athlete. I also think he is a better shot maker and has more shooting potential than people are talking about. This is going to sound counterintuitive, but the thing that I question is actually his first step. I don't think he gets by guys in a straight line as often as people assume because they see the vertical athleticism, and he's going to need that to be a primary playmaker at the next level. So that and whether or not he's got the alpha personality, I think those are the variables that are kind of the swing categories for his future.
To number 7 we go. The Portland Trailblazers have the pick. Kyle playing mock GM for Portland.
Yeah, and at number 7 for the Portland Trailblazers, I'm going to select Duke's A.J. Griffin. While we're taking swings on potential guys with the highest upside, I think A.J. Griffin represents exactly that at number 7. He began the season injured at Duke. He was injured for much of his senior season, so there is some injury concern here and some questions about maybe his long-term ability to bounce back from some of these injuries. But took him some time to get into his groove. He emerged as, I think, one of the best shooting wings in this draft. He has a great physical frame, very tough, can thrive in the mid-range. He looks the part at 6'6" of a future two-way star if he can stay healthy. I think that is a legitimate question and why he might slip in this draft, but to me, a clear guy who is going in the top 10 of this draft and has star potential at number 7.
And our colleague David Cobb likes him even more than that. He has him going number 4 overall, so right behind that first flight in our top 3. Let's recap the first half of the lottery from our guys as we move through the first round of our first mock here on CBS Sports HQ. Chet, Jabari, Paolo, 1, 2, 3. Keegan Murray goes 4 to the Kings. Jaden Ivey rounding out the top 5, followed by Shaedon Sharpe to the Pacers and A.J. Griffin to Portland. On the clock, our NBA first-round mock special here on CBS Sports HQ. Chet Holmgren goes first overall to the Magic. Jabari Smith is the favorite to go number 1 overall if you're looking in Vegas and looking for a wager on the draft. He goes number 2 to Oklahoma City, and then Paolo Banchero 3 to the Rockets. Those 3 guys looked at as the top 3 picks, maybe not in that exact order, but in some particular order. And then the question marks started 4. We had Keegan Murray going to the Kings, followed by Jaden Ivey, Shaedon Sharpe, and A.J. Griffin. All right, let's get to the back half of the lottery. Chris Hassel, joined by our 3 mock general managers, Garry Parrish, Adam Finklestein, and Kyle Boone. Garry, you have the pick for the Pelicans at 8.
And I'm going to have New Orleans taking Ochai Agbaji, the 4-year star for the Kansas Jayhawks, who just won a national championship and was the most outstanding player, of course, of the Final Four. I'm higher, I can admit, on Agbaji than most, but I don't see what's not to like, other than you might be a little bothered that he's 3 or 4 years older than some of the other prospects that are going to go in the lottery of this draft. But a 6'5" wing who's a plus defender and shot above 40% from three-point range on 6.5 attempts per game. Like, what is not to like? And if you get him in New Orleans, the key is obviously getting Zion Williamson healthy, but then when he's healthy and on the court, surrounding him with shooters who can guard. And Ochai Agbaji, I think, obviously checks both of those boxes.
Yep, I really like this pick, GP, especially at number 8. Ochai Agbaji, I think, is a guy who's going to instantly contribute to a team like the Pelicans. The Pelicans last season ranked 27th among 30 NBA teams in three-point shooting percentage. Agbaji will instantly produce as a three-point shooter. Pelicans also the only lottery team this year who were also in the NBA playoffs. So they're in a window where not only are they competing for a playoff spot, they also have a chance to really add to this young core that they have, especially with Zion Williamson returning. You want to add shooters around Zion, just like GP said. I think Agbaji fits exactly that need. So number 8, I really like this pick.
Fingers crossed on Zion actually returning next season and staying healthy. That would be fun to see this Pelicans team healthy and all together after overachieving without Zion this past season. All right, number 9, the San Antonio Spurs with the first of 3 first-round selections. Adam with the pick.
We are going to take Arizona's Benedict Mathurin. He is someone that I had even higher on my board. I've got him at number 7. Reason being is that I think he's got a pretty significant upside, but also a fairly high floor. And he's kind of the last prospect on the board who fits that category in my mind. He's going to come in and I think at worst be a 3-and-D type player. He's got good positional size, solid length. His length ended up measuring out better than some people had reported during the course of his college season. I think he shoots a really good ball. He's projectable defensively. And given the rate of improvement, I do think there's a chance that he continues to evolve and becomes more than a role player. So given that combination of untapped upside and yet still a pretty high floor, we're taking him at number 9.
Let's round out the top 10 with the Washington Wizards. Garry Parrish has that pick.
We'll take Johnny Davis out of Wisconsin, which is one of the real great stories in college basketball this past season. This is a guy who was a whatever recruit coming out of high school, certainly not anybody who projected as an NBA player. And his freshman season, he was just a role player for the Badgers. But in this sophomore season, boy, he took off and put up some massive numbers. 19.7 points per game, 8.2 rebounds per game, shot not perfectly from three-point range, but he has done enough in his 2-year college career to suggest that he can be a reliable three-point shooter, with time in the NBA. To go from an off-the-radar guy to a possible top 10 pick like this, it is not a normal thing, but that is certainly what Johnny Davis has done, and he's going to be the latest Wisconsin Badger to spend time in the NBA.
10 picks in. We don't have any international players. We don't have any G League Ignite players. But at number 11, Adam, you're going to change that for the Knicks.
We are taking Dyson Daniels. I think he's going to fit with Tom Thibodeau. He is a defensive-minded young player. And I really think it's the overlap of his perimeter size and strength, which makes him multi-positional, the defensive mindset with which he plays. He's got terrific instincts on that end of the floor. And he's also a very good passer. I mean, believe it or not, the areas of his game that he has to work on is his individual offense. You're seeing the catch and shoot game right here. That's an area that he made strides in during the Ignite season, but it's got to continue to get better. He's got to continue to get better as an advantage creator and a playmaker. Right now, his best offense is taking smaller guards into the post or utilizing his floater game, but I just think that size, passing, and defense, too much to say no to for anybody coached by Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, he just turned 19 years old, too, so he's one of the younger prospects in this draft. A 6'7" guard who, like Adam said, is terrific defensively. Some people might argue the best perimeter defender, available in this draft. Only shot, 34% from three-point range with the G League Ignite. That's obviously not terrific, but if you believe that the jump shot can improve and become a real weapon, then a lot of the other stuff you're looking for in backcourt players, that stuff's already there.
All right, let's move on to our first multiple pick team of this draft. The Oklahoma City Thunder are up again at 12 after taking Jabari Smith second. Kyle, who do you have them going with here?
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear that sound, but that is Oklahoma City Thunder GM Sam Presti sprinting to turn in this pick. At number 12 for Jeremy Sohan from Baylor. He's a 6'9" combo forward who was a year ago not even close to being on the one-and-done radar, emerged because of injuries in part for Baylor last season, as one of their most impactful players. He is first team all defensive menace, a guy who is always in the mix on defense. He is always shaking it up. He's a guy who I think legitimately can guard 1 through 5 in an NBA defense right now, and really talented playmaker as well, a guy that I think is going to be an immediate contributor for an NBA team. The question here, I think for Jeremy Sochan is going to be the shot. He shot just under 30% from 3 as a true freshman, just barely better than that in catch and shoot situations. I think it's an area where he looks comfortable, but the shot and the percentages aren't quite there. But defensively, I think he's going to be a difference maker, and I'm buying the shot long term. At number 12, I think this is a good developmental pick for the Thunder.
To add to Jabari Smith and the Thunder with the 30th pick, the final pick in the first round as well. The Hornets at 13, and Garry selecting for Michael Jordan's team.
We will take Jalen Duren out of the University of Memphis. I created something of a weird controversy last summer when I watched Jalen Duren for the first time, once we started re-entering gyms, after the start of the pandemic. And at this time, he was rated as the number 1 prospect in his class. And I sort of pointed out that, typically, at least from my perspective, number 1 prospects in a high school class are candidates to be number 1 draft picks in an NBA draft. And he didn't really look like that to me because he was more of a traditional center than a modern center. And I couldn't imagine anybody spending maybe even a top 5 pick on somebody like that. Fast forward to today, and there's a good chance he will go outside of the top 10 for all of the reasons I thought or assumed last summer. But all of that said, he's still a really interesting NBA prospect. Legit 6'11", incredible body, can really, move well without the ball. Skill set still developing, but there's some potential there even as a passer. And he did block more than 2 shots a game at Memphis, which suggests he can be a rim protector, which is something Charlotte obviously needs. On that note, I would also at this point consider Mark Williams at a Duke for a lot of the same reasons, but simply put, with both of those prospects on the table, I think Duren's the better long-term prospect. I'd go with him.
Yeah, I agree with Garry here. I don't think top 10 is probably in Jalen Duren's outcomes in this draft, even after being, formerly the number 1 recruit in his respective recruiting class. But at number 13, especially for a team in Charlotte who is probably looking to upgrade its front court, you could do worse than Jalen Duren, absolutely. He's a really efficient scorer around the rim, a guy who's a great transition player, really skilled shot blocker. And Charlotte's going to want to add someone who can be kind of a lob threat for the Hornets, especially next to LaMelo Ball. I think Jalen Duren is exactly that. At number 13, I think this is a good pick.
All right, one more lottery pick. It's the Cavs at 14. Adam?
Well, the Cavs are a team that made tremendous strides last year. They've got great young talent, and I think they are going to keep a local product at home with Malachi Branham, who exceeded all expectations at his freshman season at Ohio State. To put it in perspective, when this guy was in high school, we considered him a combo forward. He was very much an open floor slasher and mid-range and in scorer. At Ohio State, he really showed he had more guard skills than advertised. He's got a compact three-point shot. He started to play with the ball in his hands more often. He's got to get much, much better on the defensive end of the floor, but he knows that. In fact, he incorporated defensive drills into his pro day last week at the NBA Combine. So we are buying the character here. We are buying the fact that he has improved. His rate of improvement has been off the charts in the last couple of years, and we're buying keeping the hometown product close to home and joining a talented young core under Kobe Altman.
All right, those are your 14 lottery picks here as we go through the first round in our CBS Sports HQ NBA Mock Draft 1.0. The number 1 overall pick in this mock for the Orlando Magic was Chet Holmgren, followed by Jabari Smith and Paolo Banchero. Keegan Murray was 4. Jaden Ivey rounded out the top 5. Ochai Agbaji went number 8 to the Pelicans. Johnny Davis out of Wisconsin to the Wizards at 10. And very first non-college player going at 11 in Dyson Daniels to the New York Knicks. That is our lottery mock draft.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.